shine in the morning sun. Egypt's wisdom meets everyone. Edu-Next-AI calls the world to see a future we're building for you and me. Egypt co-codes the future hand in hand. AI at the Nile's edge we stand. From our roots to the stars we soar high. Edu-Next-AI we rise, we try. Learning together bright and free. The Nile carries our destiny. The Nile carries our destiny.
Now, we are going to have our fourth session. It is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for this session, expert or novice who with AI education. We are honored to be joined by Dr. Andrea, Director and Professor at the School of Teachers Education, College of Community Innovation and Education at the University of Central Florida. Dr. Andrea is a dedicated leader in advancing teacher education and exploring how emerging technologies, especially artificial intelligence, are shaping the way we teach, learn, and prepare future educators. Her session will invite us to reflect on an important and timely questions. Is in AI-driven era, in AI-driven era, what does it mean to be an expert, and how do we guide new practitioners or new people with no experience in AI in navigating the rapidly evolving landscape of AI in education? Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Andrea. Thank you very much for joining us. It is highly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for having me today. I appreciate it. I know that you've been listening for a long time, so if you need a stretch of any sort, please take that stretch. And I want to make sure that you can see everything here. So let me know if you can see that okay?
Yes, I can see it. It's okay.
Okay, perfect. All right. So my question for you today is, who is the expert? So we're talking about AI, and I just want to say that I'm so excited being here from the edge of the Nile to the cutting edge of AI is an exciting place to be. This is a global context, which is amazing. It's such an opportunity for me to be here and to be able to speak with you today. So I want to thank all of you for being here and engaging with me as well. So just a little bit about me, a little bit about my background. I taught students about aged 12 to 18 for over a decade. I was a science teacher. So here in the States, we call that high school and middle school, secondary school. And then I transitioned and went into higher education. I was a liaison between the engineering college and teachers in a city here in Ohio, Cincinnati. And then I became a full professor. I was an associate dean for undergraduate programs for a while at a different institution. And now I'm here at the University of Central Florida, and I'm the director for the School of Teacher Education. So we are a really big unit. We have undergraduate and graduate programs. We have elementary, secondary, early childhood, and exceptional student education. So we're a big unit with lots of people, and I am hoping to bring just a taste of who's the expert to you, and I'm hoping to get a lot of your feedback today as we go through some of this. If you'd like to share with me where you are or who you are in the chat, I'd love to know a little bit about you. So feel free to do that if you feel comfortable doing that. So, okay. So breaking boundaries in education. So why why now? Why are we talking about this? So there are some visionary researchers, educators, entrepreneurs, people that make policy, and they're really thinking about, well, how do we make AI a part of this world that we're in? And although we might be focusing on teaching here, we are really thinking about AI in a broader context, in a global context. So our charge today is, how are we going to engage with AI, and how do we make AI an inclusive part of what we do? Thinking about, are we the expert? Are we the novice? Are the people we're working with the expert or the novice, across cultures and in classrooms? So hopefully this won't take a whole 55 minutes, but I kind of tried to break it down into little sections just so that you have an idea of what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of a primer first, talk specifically about experts and novices, talk about some paradoxes in practice. I'll give you a few cases, and then talk about a little bit of a framework for you to remember, and then questions and answers. So what is AI in plain language? I know you have been talking about this for quite a while, so I am sure all of you already have this down. But basically, AI are systems that learn patterns from large data sets, and they make predictions. They generate some kind of output. So with this AI, you can create new images or audio or text, and we have to keep asking ourselves, just like the speakers that I heard before me, what's coming next? I liked that Christine said, use a pencil, because I think she's right. We're going to have to use a pencil because it's going to keep changing on us. So some key things to think about. The models that we have right now are confident, but they definitely don't know everything. And verification is human work, and that's where that expert and novice piece really comes into play. And then LLMs, those kind of float around, and you hear about those sometimes. So we're talking about large language models here. So the next word predictors. So what's going to come next? They model linguistic patterns. They don't understand like humans do. If I ask you to finish a phrase, so I'll just pick a phrase here in the States that most people would know. Happily ever what? Like, what would you put as the last word there? Happily ever what? Well, if somebody said, or if a language model said happily ever before, I think people would say, that's probably not right. It probably should be happily ever after. So these are just predictors. And as those predictors grow, they get better, and they do a better job at thinking about what that next word or paragraph or image should look like. So it augments our thinking, and it helps us refine and repeat what we're doing, but it doesn't replace what we're doing. So some things to think about: multimodality, text, vision, audio generation, GPT-4o, long text, so up to, a million or so tokens. It's got huge input, so Gemini. Your private AI, so your Apple Intelligence and your private cloud compute, you have more privacy-aware patterns. And you have open weight and small models that are improving. So input to output transformation is public, it's known, it's efficient. Costs are dropping. So all these things are good, but it leads to more people using it. And that leads us back to, who's the expert? So if I ask you, who's the expert, my guess is you could write me a long list of how you know if someone's an expert, or how you know if you're an expert. But if you're using how people learn, and there's a reference here at the end, it goes through and it gives you some categories to think about. So experts notice patterns. Experts can centralize around these core ideas. They don't just have isolated facts. Experts can put things into context. They know where it applies and when it applies. And experts are able to receive and adapt and retrieve information in a way that's very effortless. It's very fluent. So think about something that you do every day. Maybe it is pouring a glass of water. So if you are pouring a glass of water, and you go to get a cup and there aren't cups in the cupboard, uh, would you know what to do, or would you just be lost because there were no cups? Chances are you would know exactly what to do because you're an expert in that space. You're an expert at knowing where the cups are. But now imagine that you're in a place you've never been before. Maybe you're visiting somewhere and you go to find a cup and there's not a cup. How do you act differently in that situation? You don't have a pattern to follow. You understand the core idea is people usually will keep cups in a certain place. Contextually, you know that usually that's in a kitchen area, and you know that you probably have to hunt around. Well, maybe you look in a couple of cabinets and you can't find a cup. What do you do next? So those are the kinds of things, if you think about AI and how it's building and how it's learning, it's almost like us in a situation that we know really well, and then all of a sudden we're in a situation where we don't quite understand that as well. Something else from how people learn, to bring this back to teaching, is that just because we're experts in something doesn't mean that we know how to teach it. And I think that most people here would probably already know that. Experts vary in their flexibility and they're able to adapt to new situations. However, they can also be novices. So why does AI raise the stakes for us? Well, these large language models can produce things that are really good. They look good, at least, but they can be wrong. And I've heard a couple different speakers talk about this. So we have to check what's happening. So experts tend to be able to detect or figure out and repair mistakes. I believe in one of the earlier presentations I saw, take what AI is giving you, and then you should be able to adjust that. So that's repairing those mistakes. But novices, on the other hand, they don't really see what's broken or what's wrong. They take what they're getting sometimes at face value. So when we're using AI, we're designing tasks and support that expands our judgment, not just our speed. And we need to ask about the ethical implications. And again, I've heard all these terms kind of swirling around, but all this kind of goes back to that, who is the expert? So I'm going to ask you, who and where are the experts? I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to just come up with an answer. Who and where are the AI experts in your space? All right, so I'm going to introduce you to someone who is definitely, I think, on the expert realm. So if you don't know Punya Mishra, he has a blog, and he has a couple of very recent blogs that are really pertinent to what we're doing. So one of them is Gen AI and the Expertise Paradox, and the link to the blog is down on that slide. Why it makes experts work more importantly, but harder. So AI makes experts work more important. So what we're doing matters, but it's more demanding. And with the integration of using AI, it kind of widens the gap between the experts and the novices, because the experts can use that input from AI, or the output, excuse me, from AI, and they can make something better. Novices tend to accept what's there at face value, and sometimes that doesn't work well for them. So it can raise the importance of our judgment and our caring. So caring about something is really important. Caring about the connections and the people we're using this with is also really important. So this is a chart, and I'll give you a second. It's probably small. I hope that you can see it. But this is a chart from Mishra's 2025 blog. And you can see the theoretical models there on the left, and then you can see the the Microsoft study findings on the right. In the middle, it's predicted impact on working on AI. So one of the things that I just was talking about and how people learn is pattern recognition. So that's about the fourth one down there. And you'll see experts are meaningful domain-specific chunks. So experts are able to get those chunks of information and use them. And it says that AI should help separate the suitable tasks from those needing expert judgment. But this Microsoft study says, well, there's mixed evidence on this. So even experts struggle with consistent task decisions, like allocation decisions. So I'm not going to read through each of these, but I'm hoping that you can take a minute at some point, excuse me, and read through the prediction and the study findings and how it relates to being an expert. Because I think sometimes we use the terms expert and novice, and we use them very fundamentally. We use them in a way that really doesn't showcase the depth of what it means to be an expert or a novice. For all of us that are using AI, if I said, okay, how long have you been using AI? I don't know what the answers would be. So if you want to put that in the chat too, you're welcome to do that. But chances are you probably haven't been using it more than 5, maybe 10 years at the absolute most, right? So are we really experts in this space, or are we learning to be experts in this space? And what does that mean? So I do encourage you to go back through this list and really think about each of these and what that means. Another blog post from Mishra, again in 2025, is basically addressing the novice's dilemma in learning with Gen AI. And this is a chart from that blog post. And you can see that you're talking about content down at the bottom, and then knowledge of using AI on the left. And you can see the high and the low there. So if you are someone who has a high content knowledge and someone who has a high understanding of using AI, you're in that red block, that dual expertise challenge. So you are trying to navigate all the pieces that come about when you're using AI. If you have that high domain knowledge, but you're not quite sure how to use AI, then you're in that bottom right corner. And that's where you have the expert's advantage, because you understand the content, you can really do something with the output. But if it's the other way, if you have low content knowledge and low understanding, then that's going to be that yellow kind of block on the lower left. That's the novice's dilemma. And that's where they really don't know what to do, because they're not understanding the content. They don't really understand AI. And so they don't know how to write good prompts, and they don't know how to interact with it successfully. But if they have a high knowledge of how to use AI, but a low knowledge of the content, sometimes that can get them in trouble, because they feel like they're an expert. Well, I'm an expert in using AI, but because of their misunderstanding of the content, they end up in a trap, and that's that false confidence trap. So thinking about where you are in a particular space, and it might be different in different content domains and with different groups of people or with different partnerships. Where do the people that you're working with, and where do you yourself fall in this space? And understanding that will help us, I think, use AI more effectively. So something else that Mishra points out is Dewey's 4 impulses for learning. And so when we learn, Dewey says basically that we need, we need inquiry, we need to construct, we need to communicate, we need to express ourselves. And in these spaces, we can find a genuine use for AI, and we can find a use for AI in classes and in classrooms. We are teaching people how to learn well. We are encouraging people to learn content, and we want them to do the things that are here. We want them to express themselves and communicate with others and construct new ideas and inquire about the things around them. And using AI can be a part of what they're doing. So the last thing by Mishra that I'm going to show you again from 25 is basically this hidden cost of AI in schools. And one of the things in this blog post jumps out. It's a developer survey showing trust in AI coding tools is falling as usage rises. So basically, as people are using AI more and more, their trust in using it in the output is falling. And the solutions are close to right, but they're not quite right. And so what that does for someone that's in a computer science and computer engineering realm is it causes them a lot of time for debugging. And the same thing can happen in our spaces with content. It doesn't always have to be code. It can be just really small things that are just slightly off, and that might cause us more time than we need. So thinking through with the people you're working with, how are we using this? Why are we using it? What kind of extra work are we having to do? And how is this helping us advance? Are questions that are going to help the group decide how best to use AI. So this novice's dilemma, we're going to kind of go back to that block, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we get through that novice's dilemma. Novices lack both that domain expertise and that AI savvy, or the understanding of AI. And that gives them this double vulnerability. So they're really in a space where they're not sure what to do. Thank you. We can't really give them a checklist because that's not enough. Learners need tasks that they care about and that they can own. So they need to understand something because they want to understand it. So if they care about it, there's an authentic audience, they're able to verify it, that becomes a meaningful learning space for them. It's not just a casual task. It's not just something they're being told to do, but it's something they want to do. So making sure that there's a connection with the learner and AI is a really important step. And one of the things that I like to tell people is if you care enough about using the result, then you should care enough to check that result. You should care enough to make sure that that result is what you need it to be. So the hidden challenge of repair. So remember that when we get that output from AI, we have to do something with it. We have to make it better. We have to make sure that it's reflective of what we want it to be. So for teachers, this can be a little challenging sometimes. So interviews with teachers show that the time that they spend doing the editing, the rejecting, and reauthoring those outputs, that is an additional burden on the time that they spend. Now they can gain some of that time back because the output might have taken a lot less time than it originally did. But again, it's something that needs to be weighed. Where is the time best spent for that particular person or that particular teacher? And they need to think about that. Experts do this editing really well. Novices, they think what they see is right sometimes, and sometimes that's wrong. So something to think about. So when you assess and repair and you're in that process, you're not just looking for a final product, but you're trying to make sure that the whole process, the whole system is a part of your organization, is a part of what you are doing to make your classroom or your learning space better. So how do you go about fixing what AI produces? When I've talked to people, a lot of times they tell me, well, I just read through it and then I change some things and I'm finished. And although that might work sometimes, I think that we need to think through, is that the best practice for us to use all the time with these generations that are being given to us from AI, this output? So how do we best interact? How do we best repair what we're given as teachers, as educators? How do we do that best for students and with students? So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about a case here. So this is about microelectronics and Gen AI. This was presented at a GLS VLSI conference in 25. The QR code is there if you're interested in the paper. And basically, this was a VLSI, a very large scale integration microelectronics course. And the students used an LLM for code generation, explanation, and discovery. Basically, these VLSIs are the circuits that are driving today's technology. And what the key result was from this is instructor time was actually shifted toward verification, toward interpretation, towards scaffolding the repair of the students. And that's a very different way to approach a course than in the past when it was much more about explaining the microelectronic space. So it's less today about explaining a space and more about helping students verify, helping them to interpret, helping them to repair those outputs. So from this microelectronics case, there's a couple of things that you can do. So design moves. One is to require students to show edits that they make to AI output. So if I were to ask you, how many of you ask students or in any space, a partnership or the people that you're working with, how many people ask, hey, show me what you've changed from the AI output? Another thing is to prohibit or to say no to anything that's like a copy paste kind of lab. So asking students to orally defend things that they're working on or to explain code that they're using, those are very different types of assessments, but they get at the heart of understanding more so than just saying, here is the code that I'm using that can easily be generated, although it often has some things that have to be debugged. Grounding prompts and making sure that course details help are used in the input for AI help to reduce the outputs that are wrong, and those are sometimes called hallucinations. So those outputs, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that the outputs are as good as they can be, and then help our students make sure that they're verifying, they're repairing, and they're making sure that everything that's there is something that they're going to be proud of and something that they can stand behind. So another thing to consider are traditional partnerships. Usually when we work with other people, when we work with industries, when we work with students, we are growing our own expertise as we learn about other spaces. The more that we use AI and the more that we are somewhat isolated from each other and from working together, the question becomes, how can AI support partnership growth? So who is the expert when you're working in a group? It might be everybody in a different space, or it might be a few people. How do those experts collaborate? How do we learn from our social examples of partnership to figure out how we best can leverage using AI? So in school, university, industry partnerships, there's an example. Again, this QR code goes to this particular paper. Basically, we can turn AI from a shortcut into an amplifier. So a lot of times we think about AI as, oh, it's faster and faster is better. Faster isn't always better. It's sometimes better. We do have to do the repairs. But one of the things that it definitely does is it amplifies the way that we have access to information, especially in places that are rural or under-resourced. All of a sudden, there is like a partner there with you, although it's an artificial partner. You have a partner that's able to help you bring information in and is kind of an expert with you working in that space. So there are a couple of quick things that I'm going to show you. And I do encourage you to think about your traditional partnerships now and working with AI and how that can be a partnership and how those things actually work together and how they build off each other. So this is just a quick example of a professional development that we worked with teachers. It was 16 days. We used Jupyter notebooks, NetLogo, virtual reality, Arduinos, so a whole bunch of different types of technology and tools. And the teachers co-designed lessons. And I know that you have been thinking about how to use AI to design lessons. So how do you think AI can be a co-designer with educator needs with these types of tools? You could learn potentially about these tools. You could see how these tools are used. You could ask for examples. You could also start a small partnership or a small group at a school or in a community, and you could use AI as that powerful expert in your group to help you understand what's happening. Another example is we worked with quite a large group of teachers, and what we kept hearing over and over is, I need time for practice. And so we wrote an article about that. And in this particular professional development, what we found is that there has to be some kind of conditionalized knowledge and rehearsal space. We can't just deliver information, just like a teacher can't just deliver facts and expect students to understand it. So with AI, if we use it as just a deliverer of facts, of output, then we're not using it probably to its full potential, because we want to use it as a rehearsal space. We want to use it as a space where our teachers really have an understanding, and we as educators have an understanding of those different context pieces and how they fit together. So how do you think AI can assist with this kind of space? How could you use AI in helping other teachers or in helping educators or students or community members have that time that they need for practice? In another example, some cybersecurity micro-credentials, again, about 30 people. I won't read the self-efficacy gains, but there were quite a few of those. What we have found here is that offering mentoring or sample lesson plans and synchronous support went a long way with helping them actually implement something different, in this case, cybersecurity, into their classrooms. So how can we use AI to do that? How can we use AI as a mentor? How can we input a simple lesson plan or a sample and then ask for revisions? We would do that, of course, with very specific prompts. And then with synchronous classroom support, can we use AI as that powerful partner to help the people that are trying to find that time for practice with their students to have that support that they need in real time in their classrooms? Last example I'm going to show you here is this is a grant project from rural districts, and it was over 3 years of time. And we were helping educators bridge this digital divide between partnerships and virtual access. They were trying to understand what it was like to actually do research in a engineering kind of space. So bridging access between maybe a real world job and that expertise. Maybe a traditional approach is to have those people going into that research space. Maybe a more modern or AI approach would be to interact with AI as that expert partner to help understand what that space is like. However, I keep wanting to caution that even though it's an expert partner, it's going to give us wrong information. So we always have to have that verification step. And so I do want to take just a minute or two and just tell you. So I came up with this Cairo framework as I was interacting with AI. And I was thinking that maybe it would be something helpful to think about as you're going through using AI in different spaces and educational settings. So one is creating caring tasks. So are they authentic? Are they locally owned problems? Are they real audiences? Do our students really have a connection? Do the people we're working with really have a connection to what we're doing? So creating that caring space is going to be important. Augmenting or expanding, not automating or making it automatic, is going to be really important. So we want AI kind of in that middle space, in that mid process. We don't want to use AI as our starting point because we need to bring some expertise to the table in order to make AI really work for us. We don't want to just accept that output. We want to make sure it's really working for us and doing what we need. And then, of course, we have to verify and make edits once that output is given to us. We want to invest in expertise. So we want to take time to practice. We want to co-teach, we want to mentor, and we want to use AI as one of those rehearsal spaces and see what we can gain from doing that. We want to repair what we get in outputs, and we want to reflect on it. So we want to detect what's there, diagnose it, decide what to do, document it, make that change. Working with students through that process, having them showcase to us, what did you detect? What did you change? Why did you make that change? Those are going to become very powerful assessments as we start using AI. And then we need to orchestrate access, right? We need to think about policy, and we need to think about the ethics that are surrounding AI, how we're using it. Are we teaching those ethics to the educators and to the people that we're working with? So a couple things for you to use today or tomorrow, something to think about. So one of them is think, pair, prompt, repair. You might have heard of think, pair, share before. And this is a take off of that. So think, pair, prompt, repair. So outline or think what your initial thoughts are. You're more of the expert than sometimes we think we are. So we have to take that outline or take that initial thought to use that as a prompt. And then we're going to predict. So in pairs, before I even use AI, I'm going to get with a partner. I'm going to talk with them. I'm going to say, this is what I predict is going to happen when we put in the prompt. Then we're going to make that prompt, hopefully together in collaboration. And then when we get the output, we're going to repair. We're going to mark those revisions for changes. So this is an example of a collaborative type of assignment that you could use in a classroom. Another one is evidence-first prompting. So you're going to feed local sources first. Excuse me. So you're going to provide the model with context. You're going to synthesize or evaluate that output, and you're going to repeat the prompt without context. So you're going to resynthesize and discuss the changes. So what this basically is you putting in information first and then putting it in again and comparing your outputs. So once you have the output from the first one, putting that back in to see what you get a second time and comparing those two is a powerful way sometimes to see what's actually happening and where the understanding lies with the students that you're working with. Okay, some assessment shifts to try. So one of them we've talked about here. So grade process artifacts. So have students create a repair log, have them create a decisions made log, have them talk about the sources that they used in creating their prompts. What we don't want to do while we're using AI is just to look at a final product. And I think that's where a lot of spaces are getting caught. They're getting caught with, oh my goodness, I don't want students or the people I'm working with just giving me an output from AI, so I need to stop the use. But instead, if we embrace how are you using it and what are you doing with it, and that becomes part of our assessment, that becomes a very powerful place for us to have a real understanding of what the students and the people we're working with really do understand. So we want to use more oral defenses. We want to use short in-class checks or in-course checks. We want to make sure that what students are saying, that they really understand. When you've interacted with a small child, sometimes they know a word, but they don't understand the meaning of the word. And I feel like that's a good way to think about students sometimes using AI. They understand the words in the output, but they may not really understand the meaning behind the output. So that's a really important thing to check for. We want to reserve general tasks for aggregating like large data sets or comparisons. We absolutely want to use AI for things like that. But then we want to make sure that we're able to verify and make sure that that information is correct. And this makes me think of using a calculator. There was a time when they didn't want anyone using a calculator. They wanted to make sure everyone could do all the complex pieces of that equation. But what we found is it's okay to use the calculator. We just have to be able to verify that final answer. Is that answer what we were expecting? And we have to think about AI in that same kind of thought process. So what do you think? What have you tried? Have you tried any of the assessments? Have you tried repair logs? Have you tried any of these things with the students that you're currently working with? So I'm going to switch a little bit over here to policy signals. So AI literacy. When we say AI literacy, I think everyone understands that we're talking about the understanding of that space, of that subject. In this case, it's AI. So there's a European Commission AI Act that you've probably heard of. And basically it says that any AI measures are required. So literacy obligations and measures are required as of February of this year. They continue to say that they're going to have provisions roll in 26, 27. So already there is policy in place about not just using AI, but saying we need to use it and we need to figure out how to harness its immense potential and its immense power, especially in education. There are private AI patterns, so on-device private patterns that we can use. They offer stronger privacy options, and if you haven't looked into these, I would highly recommend that you take a little bit of time, talk with your students and the people that you work with, and make sure that you're all agreeing on those privacy options that you're using. And then including AI literacy outcomes in any sort of professional development, in any sort of teaching, curriculum maps, those types of things are really important to do. We need to make sure that we're thinking about AI not as just an add-on, but a partner with us, an expert with us. It is the expert in the room that's going to sometimes make mistakes because every expert makes mistakes, but we need to invite that expert as part of what we're doing. So there's a call to action here. Your expertise is absolutely not obsolete. We need it. It's the operating system for AI to function well. Your expertise drives the prompts that drive what the outputs are from AI. We need all the experts we can get, and we need them to think about harnessing this immense power of AI. You support the work of the future. You support the workforce of the future. And using a new tool, using something in a different way is always challenging, but it will take us to better places. So build partnerships that give novices time and context and feedback to become experts. Help build those partnerships, just like we did traditionally before we could use AI in the way that we can today. Think about who is the expert. Ask yourself, is this person or am I the expert in the domain knowledge? What about an expert in using AI itself? Think about those protocols, the Cairo protocols, and how you could use those. Share your artifacts. Share the way that you are assessing artifacts and products and how you're interacting with students. And then think about best practices in teaching and how those interact with AI. So how do you build a supportive environment? How do you ensure that you have clear goals, that you're assessing well, you're reflecting, that your classes are differentiated, that you're engaging your students in learning, you're having them think about project-based activities where they are engaging in things that are authentic and real to them, real world that they care about, that they're working together cooperatively. You're modeling things for them and they are creating models, which are different ways to think about that. You're chunking material for them and then they're verifying information back from AI and looking for those chunks of information. You're varying the instructional methods that you're using. You are reviewing with your students, you're giving them good feedback, you're praising them, you're communicating, you're organizing. You are approachable and authentic, you're building community in a class. That's just a short list of best teaching practices. How are we using AI to do this? And if I had hours with you, I would love to work through with you, how are we doing this in our different spaces? And what are some best case examples? Because my guess is you have some examples that you've seen where, wow, this really worked well with this particular group of people. And AI really was an additional expert and really did help in this way. So thinking about those best teaching practices is really important. So what do you think? Who is the expert in the room? And I gave you a couple of seconds in the beginning to answer that question, like who is the expert? Would you consider yourself an expert in content? Would you consider yourself an expert in using AI? And what should novices use AI for first? Should they immediately ask a question before they think through it? Or do you think there's a better way? Should they outline something, think with a partner, and then go to AI? What about experts? Is it a different path or pattern for them? How do we reduce teacher workload if the repair work is adding time to what they're doing? If we're expecting the outputs to be faster, then is there going to be an expectation that teachers and educators can work faster? And what are those implications for us in using AI? How do we put policy guardrails on that to make sure that we have the time to use AI effectively and efficiently and meaningfully and purposefully, and not just use it because it does make things faster? And then where do we start with this policy and the privacy and the ethical considerations in context? So there are a lot of questions to answer. There are a lot of spaces in the research realm to reach out into. But I also want to take a couple of minutes and make sure that I answer any questions that you have. And I also want to make sure that I give a huge thank you to all of you for being here and being willing to ask yourself, who is the expert? So thank you.
Thank you so much. And the floor is open for your question. So please raise your hand if you wanted to ask any question, and I'm here to unmute you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to try to stop sharing so I can see the chat because I can't see the chat with the share. So I hope that's okay. All right, thank you. I will just go through boxes. Excuse me if I mispronounce your name. Aza?
Yes, hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's amazing. It's always beneficial to hear from experts like you. Thank you so much. However, it's really difficult now to name someone expert, as you said. And to be honest, I don't know. I don't think how long or how many years should we become experts in AI since it just was newly introduced to us.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, when are we going to achieve what we really want to achieve as teachers? Like, how do we get our message delivered when there is a barrier in between us and the students, between us and the materials we are creating, between us and the parents at home?
Yeah.
So now with AI, this is supposed to be closing the gap, not widening it. So I know it's difficult, it's hard,
Yeah.
but maybe you have some insights on that.
Yeah, I think just knowing that you're thinking about that question makes me happy because those are the kinds of things we have to think about to make sure that we really are closing the gap and not creating a bigger one. I think being reflective, asking ourselves, who is the expert? And I might be an expert in a small space, a small sliver, but this other person might have something else that they're bringing in. So our traditional partnerships are still really important. Using AI as an expert with all of that data is really important, but we have to be aware of the fact that we can't just rely on it as something that's going to, I'm going to say magically, magically close that gap. So there's a seamless transition. It will absolutely help with transitioning, with, revising lesson plans, for example. But there are going to be spaces where we're working with students where that's going to be new for all of us. It's going to be new for the student. It's going to be new for us. And I love what you put here. I consider myself a learner. I think that that is the best way we can think about it. In a way, we're all learners right now. We're all figuring out the different pieces and how they fit together. So I encourage you to keep asking those questions and to keep talking to the people that are around you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Amani?
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Hi. We are very pleased to have you here in our conference today. And
Thank you.
your session is really inspiring and beneficial. I'd like to ask a question about the challenges that face schools when adopting AI-based educational tools. How could we overcome these challenges? How could we solve these problems which we face at schools? And
Yeah, that it's
also another little question, what
mhm.
about how to make balanced access to AI-powered education for all students? How to make all
So
students,
balance the access.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Good questions. So the first one is challenges in schools of using AI. There are going to be many. So we could probably talk about each one individually. So I will, is there one in particular that you had in mind, or do you want me just to kind of pick on a few of them?
Yeah, please, sure. Big, some few of them because there are a lot of challenges. Maybe the accessibility to internet in schools, maybe the ignorance of how to use it for some students or teachers. Okay, if you
Yeah,
believe.
no, thank you. No, that's good. That helps me know which way you want to go. So thank you. I appreciate that. So access to the internet, I will say that that is not a concept that I don't understand. So I lived in the Western US for over a decade, and cities out there were not incredibly large. And there were hours between the cities with no buildings and no people in between them. And those places did not have very good or very reliable internet access. So for a while, I was trying to support about 500,000 people that had very poor access to using the internet. And so it is an absolute challenge, and it's something that is not necessarily easy to overcome. In the space that I was in, we tried to make partnerships with some of the spaces, I'll say like Microsoft. They were able to help us with some hotspots. So we were able to go to the different cities and to utilize those hotspots with the people that were there. We also worked with libraries and librarians to try to make sure there was at least one space in each city where people could go and they could have, I will say, semi-reliable internet. But with all of those challenges, then using AI on top of it presents its own set of challenges. So I do think that the access piece is a huge issue that we have to address globally. I think that there are absolute examples of it all over the world where there's not as much access as we need. So once we do have some access and once we are able to use the internet and we are able to harness that power of AI, then we have additional challenges. Like you said, the nuances of being able to use that in a certain space, how people accept it or don't accept it is something that we are definitely coming across. We have some instructors, for example, in our schools that embrace AI and want the students to use it. We have other instructors that are saying, no, this is not a tool that you're allowed to use. And that causes some internal struggles with the instructors and the students. So even just coming to a place of understanding that we can all use it and we might be using it in different ways, but saying that there's not a place for it at all may not be our smartest path. And that reason is because it is so ubiquitous, it is out there, and it is not something that we can, unless there's not access, it's really not something that we can keep people away from. So embracing how we do it and why we're doing it and thinking through those processes, how we outline, how we repair, those challenges are just, I'll say surface, basic, just entry challenges. And then there are just so many more. I think your question is honestly fascinating, and I think it would be a great research question, to tell you the truth, to work with a group of people from around the world to explore. But it's definitely not an easy one to answer.
Thank you so much. You clarify what I want to know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we can check the chat box. Maybe we have. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I do appreciate the comment that AI must not replace human and social interaction, because it's really important amongst learners. I just want to say, like, please, yes, let's all keep that near and dear. This is a tool for us to use. It's to make things better. It's to help us. So we don't want to replace what makes us the best people that we are, which in my opinion, is our interaction and our collaboration. So I do hope that as you think about who the expert in the room is and what that actually means, that you can use some of these resources. You can think about some of these things to try in your own spaces, and it will make a difference to what you are doing and thinking. And you can reach out to me anytime. You're welcome to send me an email. I'm happy to let you know what I think about something, or help be a think partner. I'm just really honored that I was invited today to share some of the things that I've been thinking about and working on. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of a conference, and good luck with all things AI.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andrea. Truly, it's our incredible honor and privilege to have you today. And we are all on behalf of Edu-Next-AI, I would like to thank you about your helping during our digital training and for accepting this invitation today. You were a very supportive and you gave us a lot of encouragement during this journey. Thank you very much.
Shine in the morning sun. Egypt's wisdom meets everyone. Edu-Next-AI calls the world to see a future we're building for you and me. Egypt co-codes the future hand in hand. AI at the Nile's edge we stand. From our roots to the stars we soar high. Edu-Next-AI we rise, we try, learning together bright and free. The Nile carries our destiny. The Nile carries our destiny.